In the autumn of 1943, the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard became the stage for the most terrifying experiment in military history. It was not a battle against the Nazis, but a test of physics that would allegedly rip a massive hole in the fabric of our reality. The objective was theoretically simple: electronic invisibility. The United States Navy wanted to make a destroyer escort-class ship disappear from enemy radar, but something went horribly wrong. The USS Eldridge didn't just vanish from the screen. According to witnesses, it vanished from the physical world entirely. Today, we are going to open the classified file on Project Rainbow. We are going to investigate the alleged collaboration between Nikola Tesla and Albert Einstein. We will look at the horrifying reports of sailors fused into the steel of the ship and asked, did the government accidentally discover teleportation? To understand the nightmare, we must look at the science. In the 1940s, the Navy was desperate. German U-boats were sinking Allied ships faster than they could be built. They turned to the greatest minds of the century. Albert Einstein was working on his unified field theory, trying to mathematically link gravity and electromagnetism. The theory suggested that if you could generate a magnetic field of sufficient intensity, you could bend light around an object. If you bend light, the object becomes invisible. It doesn't disappear. It just becomes a hole in the visual spectrum, like a mirage in the desert. Nikola Tesla was allegedly the original director of the project. He designed the zero-time reference generator, a system of massive coils to create this field. But Tesla quit. He warned the Navy that human biology could not withstand the electromagnetic pressure. He said, "You will have dead sailors on your hands." Tesla died in January 1943. The Navy didn't listen to his warnings. They brought in John von Neumann to finish the job. They outfitted the USS Eldridge with two massive generators, mounted where the forward gun turrets should have been, and miles of cable were wrapped around the hull. On July 22nd, they ran the first test. The generators roared to life. A strange, greenish fog began to envelop the ship. For a moment, it worked. The ship disappeared from sight, leaving only a trough in the water where the hull should have been. But the crew complained of severe nausea. They were disoriented. The Navy decided to recalibrate. They wanted only radar invisibility, not optical invisibility. The final test was scheduled for October 28, 1943. This is the date that lives in infamy. The switch was thrown for the second time. The hum of the generators became a scream. The green fog returned, but this chimney was electrically charged. Bolts of blue lightning danced across the deck. In yon instant, the USS Eldridge was gone. It didn't just fade. It ceased to exist in the Philadelphia harbor. The water rushed in to fill the void. Hundreds of miles away, at the Norfolk Naval Base in Virginia, sailors on the SS Andrew Furuseth stared in shock. They saw the USS Eldridge appear out of thin air in the harbor. It stayed there for several minutes, solid and real, before vanishing again. Back in Philadelphia, the ship reappeared in a flash of blue light. But the ship that returned was not the same ship that left. The scene on the deck was a vision from hell. The air was filled with the smell of ozone and burning flesh. The crew was in a state of total insanity. Some men were on fire, but they weren't burning with normal flames. They were burning with a strange, cold radiation that could not be put out. Others were frozen, not cold, but frozen in time. They were standing like statues, unable to move or speak, their eyes wide with terror. But the most horrific sight was the men who had been merged during the teleportation. The molecular structure of the ship and the sailors had phased out of reality. When they phased back in, they occupied the same space. Hands were fused into steel bulkheads. Legs were buried inside the solid metal deck. Two sailors were found buried up to their waists in the steel floor. Their bodies still alive, their blood circulation merging with the molecular lattice of the iron. They were screaming. The medical teams tried to cut them out, but it was impossible. The men and the ship had become one single organism. The Navy immediately classified the incident. They brainwashed the survivors. They discharged the crew as mentally unfit. They claimed the experiment never happened. The official story is that the USS Eldridge was simply on a shakedown cruise to the Bahamas, but the logs from that day are missing. For years, the story was just a rumor, until a man named Carlos Allende sent a package to the Office of Naval Research. He sent a copy of a book on astronomy, filled with scribbled notes in 3 different colors of ink, detailing the physics of the experiment. Allende claimed to be a witness. He claimed to have seen the ship vanish from his post on a nearby merchant vessel. He described the force field in perfect detail. The Navy investigated. They found that Allende was a former sailor, but strangely, instead of dismissing him as crazy, they invited him to the Pentagon. Why would the military interview a madman? Because his notes contained mathematical formulas that were classified, formulas that only Einstein's inner circle knew. The Philadelphia experiment suggests that the universe is not solid. It is a frequency. If you change the frequency of an object, you change its location in the matrix. This aligns with the theories of the Hutchison effect discovered decades later. John Hutchison proved that electromagnetic fields can cause metal to jelly and fuse with wood. It matches the descriptions of the Glocke the Bell, the Nazi anti-gravity device that allegedly disappeared at the end of the war. Did the US Navy inherit the Nazi technology? Von Neumann, who took over the project, was a German mathematician. Perhaps the Philadelphia experiment wasn't just about invisibility. Perhaps it was a clumsy attempt to crack the code of teleportation using stolen science. The survivors who weren't fused to the deck suffered a worse fate. They became unstuck in time. Witnesses claimed that years later, these men would suddenly fade out of existence in the middle of a conversation. They would become invisible phantoms. To stop this, other sailors had to lay hands on them. They had to physically touch them to ground them back into this reality. If they weren't touched in time, they would go into the freeze. They would vanish forever into the void between dimensions. This brings us to the connection with the Montauk project. Glocke, a man who claims to be a survivor of the experiment, says the story didn't end in 1943. He claims that the electromagnetic bottle created by the Eldridge ripped a hole in space-time that remained open for 40 years. Glocke says that in 1983, scientists at Montauk Point, Long Island, managed to link their time tunnel with the 1943 experiment. They created a bridge. He claims he jumped off the deck of the Eldridge in 1943 and landed at Montauk in 1983. It sounds like science fiction. But look at the physics. Einstein wrote on, Bridges worm, holes are mathematically possible. If you pump enough energy into a single point, you curve space-time until the 2 points touch. The Eldridge was a massive floating battery. The tragedy of the Philadelphia experiment is that they succeeded. They proved that matter is just energy slowed down. But they failed to realize that the human soul and the human body rely on a stable magnetic field to stay connected. When the field collapsed, the biological coherence of the crew shattered. They were scattered across the probability wave. Tesla was right. He knew that the human body is an electrical machine. You cannot put a biological machine inside a cyclotron without consequences. Today, the USS Eldridge has been scrapped. The records are sealed, but the technology didn't disappear. It went underground. Stealth technology today renders planes invisible to radar. Is that just a coincidence? Or is it the safe, light version of the 1943 tech? We see UFOs that blink in and out of existence. We see crafts that move instantly from one point to another without acceleration. Are these aliens? Or are they our own black-budget military crafts, using the perfected version of the drive that destroyed the Eldridge? The green fog described by the sailors is a consistent detail in Bermuda Triangle disappearances. Electronic fog chemidilation. Compasses spinning wildly. Is the Bermuda Triangle a natural version of the Philadelphia experiment? Maybe the Earth has natural vortex points where the magnetic field behaves exactly like the generators on the ship. If the Navy accidentally created an artificial vortex, they didn't just move a ship. They punched a bruise into the atmosphere that might still be there. Critics say the story is a hoax. They say the sailors were just telling tall tales in bars. But why did the family members of the crew report strange illnesses? Why did so many die young of rare cancers and neurological disorders? And why did Maurice K. Jessup, the researcher who first received the Carlos Allende letters, die under mysterious circumstances? He was found in his car, dead from exhaust fumes. The police ruled it a suicide, but his briefcase, containing his notes on the experiment, was missing. The Philadelphia experiment is the modern Prometheus story. We stole fire from the gods, and we got burned. We tried to play with the fundamental constants of the universe before we understood the rules of the game. The men of the USS Eldridge were the test subjects in a cosmic laboratory. They paid the ultimate price for our curiosity. They proved that reality is fragile, that the solid ground beneath our feet is just an illusion held together by magnetic forces. If those forces are disrupted, the floor dissolves, the walls dissolve, and we dissolve with them. The scary part isn't that the experiment failed. The scary part is that it worked. If the government possesses the ability to teleport matter, then borders, walls, and distances are meaningless. It means there is no place to hide. It means they can put an army in your backyard in the blink of an eye. Or, even more terrifying, they can remove you from existence. They can simply change your frequency and phase you out of this timeline. Imagine being trapped like the sailors, alive, conscious, but unable to move or speak, locked in the invisible space between seconds. That is the true horror of the Philadelphia experiment. It is a fate worse than death. It is eternal purgatory. The green fog might be the boundary of our simulation, and we are just code that can be rewritten. What do you think? Did the USS Eldridge really teleport, or was it just a story to cover up a chemical weapon accident? And if Tesla was right, what other warnings of his have we ignored? Do you believe that the Tic Tac UFOs are actually using this same electromagnetic propulsion? Leave your theory in the comments. I read every single one. In the next video, we are going to leave the technology of the West and travel to the forbidden deserts of Africa. We are going to investigate the Eye of the Sahara, a massive geological structure that matches the dimensions of Atlantis perfectly. Is the lost city of Atlantis hiding in plain sight? And why does the CIA have files on its magnetic anomalies? You need to be subscribed, because we are going to find the lost city